Cool. We're good to go. Go ahead and take it away, Ronnie.
All right, man. All right, guys. So today is, and this week is big for Hot Corner and what we do here. So when Austin and everybody in the whole Dugout Coalition kind of came together, we wanted to bring in the sports performance, strength and conditioning side of things. So this week we're going to bring Sam in, who's our performance director, and he's the guy who does all of our strength and conditioning stuff, all of our mobility work. And today we're kind of talking about how strength and conditioning and that kind of stuff is very important for you as an athlete. And I'll be the first person to say that whenever I do a lot of skill training with guys, we err mostly on doing skill work, as in like swing stuff and all of that. But I think the one thing that's a big separator, at least of what we've learned through Hot Corner, is how to provide value through strength and conditioning. And so the first thing that I want to talk to Sam about and kind of ask him is, we've got kids that are in here that are 8 years old all the way up through 18 years old. What's a big, huge deal for us at Hot Corner with strength conditioning, and how can we kind of start that at every single age level? And what's important in the strength conditioning world that people can even take home today and kind of through quarantine to get themselves better, more athletic for when they get outside and actually start training again?
Yeah, I'd say this is probably the perfect time to do it too. Nobody has more time than right now. So the big things that we look at really across all ages, doesn't really matter if you're 8, 10, 12, 20, it doesn't really matter. We're looking for some basic things first off. So I like to make sure that everybody can basically have, basic movements that a human can do. So we're looking at, being able to squat correctly. We're looking at being able to lunge correctly, which is absolutely huge. At the younger levels, you're going to see that most guys, when you get on one leg and do a lunge, they're going to be wobbly. The hips are going to be all over the place. There's no stability. I'm looking to make sure that we can do, push-ups, chin-ups, and just some of those basic movements that a lot of guys really can't do it, and not even just doing them, but doing them correctly, right? So I see push-ups as probably the most incorrectly done exercise, period. You see really like no core tension. You see the shoulders all over the place. And I related to a good question that actually somebody in my family asked me one time. So I was at brunch with my family, and I got a question, and it was an argument between an uncle and a cousin. And the uncle was trying to tell the kid that planks are better than push-ups. So he asked for my opinion. And I couldn't back him up, because at the end of the day, a push-up is going to be a plank, but now you're getting chest and shoulder and tricep involvement too. So if you're doing a push-up correctly, you're literally doing a plank the whole entire time. So if you can bang out 70 push-ups, I'm telling you right now, your core is going to be pretty jacked because you just did like a 2-minute plank. So we're looking at just those basic movements that everybody should be able to do first and foremost, and making sure that you can do it correctly. So the biggest mistake I see is just trying to get tired. A lot of guys coming in just want to die. They just want to be crawling out of the gym. They want to barely be able to move. I see parents, talking about it all the time. But what we're really looking for is making sure that kids and athletes can move correctly. At the end of the day, that's going to be more important.
Right. So the one thing that I take away from that, guys, for all of you guys that are kind of listening in on understanding your bodies a little bit, is you can do, and Sam, you can elaborate on this more, but lunging is a big deal. Squatting is a big deal. Being able to push your own body weight is a very huge deal for kids at all ages. I know for us at Hot Corner, we got kids that want to swing these huge bats all the time. They want to swing 32, 33-inch bats, drop threes for the older guys, but even the younger guys want to swing these huge bats. But the hard part is if you guys can't do push-ups and sit-ups and squats and your core isn't strong, it's going to be really difficult to move that bat really quick, right? So I think the big thing for a lot of you guys is kind of understanding that when you're actually going through your workouts and you're actually going through getting stronger, it's about handling your body first before you start to add the weight in, right? So definitely there's a lot of lunging that goes into pitching. There's a lot of lunging and strength in that goes into hitting. So when kids come into Hot Corner, we go through this huge assessment. So everybody kind of goes through this big assessment at Hot Corner where we kind of measure every single thing that you do as an athlete to figure out what you're really good at and the things that you kind of struggle with. And so for us, what do we kind of go through? And you can kind of elaborate on this a little bit more, Sam. With the assessment, what are we going through with those guys, and what do we kind of want to figure out in those assessments, and what can everybody in here kind of understand with that? Like, what are our basic general layouts of what we're kind of trying to get out of it?
So on assessment, especially as we get older, we're looking at each joint. So we're looking at hip rotation, we're looking at shoulder movement, and you'll see a lot of red flags coming out in that department pretty often. So I know I've had guys, especially I know there's a couple guys in here that have had the same issue where, we go to do an overhead test against the wall where pretty much you're back against the wall and you're just trying to go up and see if you can touch it. And what we're looking basically at, can your lats move here? Can your triceps even have that extensibility? And super important, because if your lats don't have that motion, they're also going to have trouble getting into layback, which is, throwing. So we're looking at each range of motion in your joints, because not only is that going to show us how you can be an athlete on the field, but it's also going to highlight different exercises that may or may not be good for you as a human. All right. So if I have an athlete who can't get into this position, I'm not going to put them into this position. Right. So we're going to do work to hopefully help get them there. And, sometimes it's as quick as one session, 10 minutes. Other times it might be a grind. They might have to do some homework. They might take a month or two to get there. But once they get there, we're just trying to lock it in. We're trying to make sure now that they can use that range of motion and use it often. So we're looking at each joint. That's going to highlight, number one, what they're going to be like an athlete. That's going to show us what they're going to move like as a human and what exercises and what things are going to be good for them in the weight room. On top of that, we're looking for not only each joint, but now collectively. So if we move that all together, how do they move, right? So if I have a hip that moves decently and I have an ankle and everything looks like it's moving well, and then I put you into a lunge and you can't do it, well, I know that's probably just a strength thing. So especially for my younger guys on this, the biggest thing that I would say for really anybody who isn't going through those teenage years where some crazy changes start to happen in the body and whatnot, anybody in that time frame, strength is going to be your biggest play. Because if you can just start to build some basic strength, and that's like body weight movements is great to start. And if you can build that base of strength, your movement's actually going to get better just from that. So I don't even need to stretch your hamstrings, but I can guarantee you that as you get stronger, you're going to be able to touch your toes. I've had a ton of athletes. We had one, I think, on our Instagram page a long time ago, but we had a guy who I think was 6 inches to a foot away from the ground. We did zero stretching. And within 2 months, it might have even been a month, he was touching his toes easily. And he never lost that. He was able to do that for the rest of his life. So we're looking at basically not only how does each joint move separately, but then once we move them all together, how are we looking? At the end of the day, if you're trying to be an athlete, now we're trying to do, some of the hardest, most intense motions in sport. If you're throwing a baseball and you're throwing it with max velocity, that's literally the hardest thing to do in sport. So you need to have a full body collectively that works well. When you see that, you're going to see pitchers and throwers who do it effortlessly. If you can get your whole body strong, that's going to take a ton of stress off your shoulder. It's going to take a ton of stress off your elbow. And hopefully we're going to start to spread that load, that weight across your whole entire body. So you're going to be able to do so effortlessly. You're going to feel better, and you're going to be able to practice and do that continuously. So we're kind of looking at how we can bridge that all together. And the assessment takes an hour and it's pretty intricate, so I don't want to get too in-depth with it, but, we're really looking at each joint. We're looking at how they move collectively, and then we're looking at also power. So I want to see, can you jump for distance? What are your numbers as far as exit velocity? Have you been to a PBR, which is showcase? Have you done anything on there? Do we have any numbers for your performance? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to make you a better human, and then we're trying to make you a better athlete. So we need to have some of those metrics so that we can basically see, is it working or not?
Right. So some things that I'm gonna text Austin in the chat so that he can actually get this out for everybody to see. But some things that you guys can do at home that I think will really help you are push-ups. You can pretty much do those every single day, right? You can do a pretty decent amount of volume of that pretty much every day. So guys, when you guys are doing push-ups at home, we'll be able to actually, I'll have Sam kind of talk about it a little bit, but for doing push-ups, you can do those every day. Sit-ups, planks, pull-ups, long jumping, high jumping, those are things that you guys can do every single day to work on power and strength. I know that, he'll get into a lot of a different stuff within this whole session, but realistically for you guys at home right now, I know for a fact, and I'm going to go, we're probably going to talk about this 100 times this week, but I know you guys are playing a lot of video games and there's really not a lot of stuff that you guys can do outside of just being in the house. This is a great time to set that strength base for you so that when you do get back out and you do play, that you're able to kind of get there and actually do the things you're supposed to. So realistically, for you guys, we have to move really well as people before we can move really well as athletes. So understand what that means. And basically what Sam is saying is, if you can't reach up over your head properly without stress, and you can't actually get your arm to work up over your head by keeping it straight and touching the back wall, then it's going to be really difficult for you to grow as a pitcher and being able to throw a baseball. You're probably going to have a chance of getting injured in the future. So being able to move well as a person is by just, let's lift that arm up overhead, keep the arm straight, touch the wall behind you if you can, and then come back down. If you can't do that, well, then there's probably a really good reason as to why your arm and your body isn't throwing a baseball harder, right? So a lot of this comes down to, how does your body move? So whenever I was in high school, I overlooked stretching a lot. I didn't think that I needed it. So a lot of times whenever I would go to a field, I would show up, take my glove, find a partner, and start playing catch. Then what I started to realize as I got older is my arms started to get more sore. And it would take longer and longer and longer to recover because I wasn't stretching myself. So for a lot of you guys have probably all heard of J-bands, right? J-bands are those resistance bands that pitchers use before practices to be able to warm their arms up. I highly recommend doing those pretty much every single day that you can, because that's going to help strengthen the joints in your shoulder, and that's going to help you guys kind of loosen and warm your arm up before you throw. And I highly recommend going through a full body warm-up every single day, no matter what, especially when you get to the field or a cage to practice, because what that does, it actually jumpstarts your body to get going. If you just show up to the field or the cage that day and you just try to start to get started and hit, it's going to take a long time for your body to get loose. You really should go through a stretch every single day, and I know Sam can go into that for sure. Right next to him is the actual warm-up that we require all of our guys to do every single day, and he'll turn his camera so you can see it. That's a pretty long list right there, right? But there's a reason why every single person has to do that. The reason behind it is because if you guys aren't actually warming your bodies up, then we're putting you in a position where you may get injured in the future. Now, for you younger guys, the warm-up helps you develop the right routines when you get to the field. You may not feel a huge stretch right away when you're younger, but for the older guys, you need to go through that proper warm-up before practice. There's lunging that's involved. There's arm care work that's involved. There's kind of loosening the body up. So for a lot of you guys, the two places that are really, really, really big in baseball are the hips and the shoulders, okay? And the reason for that is because our hips, we do a lot of turning with our hips, and with the shoulders, we do a lot of throwing with our shoulders. So those are the two places that we really target whenever we do a lot of our stuff. And there's a lot of places that the shoulder helps, right? There's a lot of things that attach to it in the hips and the shoulders. So for you guys, understand that the hips and the shoulders are the two places and the two things that we really need to stretch every single day. Because for us to be able to turn our hips when we throw and we hit, and for us to be able to throw the baseball as hard as we want, those parts of our body have to be really, really, really stretched out a lot. And I think if you guys start to do that every day, then your body's gonna be able to move very well. And what I know is that, like, for a guy like me, I wasn't super, super strong, but my body moves really well. So for instance, I'm able to stretch, and it's very easy for me to stretch. I can touch my toes really well. I can reach overhead really well. I can do a lot of stretches that a lot of other people can't. So my focus personally is to get stronger. So for a lot of you guys, I do a lot of the push-ups. I do a lot of the sit-ups and the planks. That's what's going to help me get stronger. And then when I get in the weight room, I actually lift weights. But for a guy like Sam, who's very, very strong, he has to work more on his mobility and flexibility. So he has to work a lot on making sure that his hips work really well, and that his shoulders work really well, and that he's not tight whenever he gets to practice. Otherwise, he's going to get hurt. So for a guy like Sam, who's super strong, he has more of an opportunity of getting injured because his body isn't super, super flexible, where mine is, right? But for me, if I don't get stronger, I'm not going to be able to throw super hard, and I'm not going to be able to hit the ball very far. So those are the kind of things that we're talking about. So for a lot of you guys, understand that whenever you're going through any type of workout, there is a huge warm-up phase to that. You should take, I mean, Sam, you can kind of talk about this in a second, but
yeah.
You should be able to take, like, let's say 20 to 30 minutes is a good time, like 15 to 20 minutes for a good warm-up. Is that right?
So let me explain. I want to explain a little bit. Let me touch on some other stuff with it, though, that you touched on too. So, and I played baseball with Ron. I played Division I baseball. I was a middle infielder, and what happened to me is I was really strong. All I did when I was in high school towards my junior and senior year, and even with my strength and conditioning coach my freshman year of college, all we did pretty much was heavy lifting, and we really didn't focus on movement quality. It wasn't, can you move well? It was pretty much just lift heavy. And what happened to me is I hurt my shoulder twice. I hurt my lat, I strained my lat, I strained my trap, I strained my calf, I strained my oblique. So within my freshman year of college, I think I had 4 injuries. I had an injury in high school, I think twice. And I was super, I got hurt all the time. I was incredibly susceptible to getting injured. And not only that, but my performance decreased dramatically. So I went from being a really fast guy, really athletic, to the point where I was pretty much just now strong. And I couldn't really do anything fast. Everything was just slow. And it was really, really, really ineffective. So as far as a warm-up goes, I'm going to say 2 things that are really important. Number 1, especially for you younger guys, movement variability. And what that means is you guys just need to move differently and move often. So a lot of people, and I know I was a video gamer when I was younger, I'd sit in a position, I'm probably there for 8 hours. And I haven't moved in any other way. And then maybe I play baseball and I'm only moving in those positions. Now, if you look at a lot of great athletes who played various sports, a lot of them played multiple sports. And the reason that that's so effective is because they're moving in so many different ways all the time. And that's absolutely huge. So if you guys can just move off and play sports, don't just play baseball, play basketball, even if it's just pickup. I'm not saying necessarily playing in a league if you don't want to, but play pickup sports, move differently, and just do it all the time. And for me, one of the reasons that we do this warm-up here is that we're trying to get the body moving incredibly well and in a lot of different ranges. So to me, I think that that's the most important part. So I'm curious if you guys warm up. You guys can post that in the chat too. But a lot of the warm-ups I see are really basic where people just run. And your goal for a warm-up is getting you ready for sport. So if you're trying to go play baseball and you're trying to be competitive, you need to do a lot of different things, right? So you want to be able to, lunge. You want to be able to twist. You want to be able to turn. You want to be able to jump. So those things need to be in your warm-up. And those are going to actually get you ready, not just to get, prevent injury, but you're actually going to perform better. I can post the warm-up in the chat after. That's no big deal. Or I can have Austin send it out. But basically, I would say, number 1, your warm-up is incredibly important. Move in a ton of different ways and do so often. And then secondly, for those that are really tight, stretching, Ryan, I appreciate that. Stretching doesn't do all that much. So for me, I was mandated to be on a stretching program by my athletic trainer in college. And I did it for 30 days every single day, and I got 0 out of it. I didn't gain an ounce of flexibility. And the research, there's countless studies now showing that you don't get more flexible. So what you need to do is stretching can be important, but after you stretch, you actually need to strengthen those ranges of motion. So if you just mobilize your hip to move better, do some squats after so you can lock that in and teach your body that it now needs to use that range of motion, because you don't want to just stretch it. You want to teach your body to use it. And that's one of the differences between flexibility and mobility. So it's really important, again, when you guys warm up and you do any type of flexibility training, that you're doing some sort of strengthening with it. Otherwise, it's not going to lock in.
Right.
So to make this actually appear more realistic for you guys, and hopefully something you guys can utilize, when you guys are going to practice or you're going to work out, whatever it is, you guys should be able to start with at least a 10-minute warm-up. And, again, we have the warm-up, and I can work on posting that for you guys, but it's moving in a lot of different ranges of motion. On top of that, for my older guys, we actually we do what's called a movement prep series in their workout. And in the movement prep, we're going to identify those weaknesses that we looked at during their assessment. So if a guy has really poor range of motion, again, going overhead, we're actually going to work on that during his movement prep. So he's going to have basically an added warm-up before he really gets to his heavy weights, because I don't want a guy moving heavy weights in a bad range of motion.
Right. So if you could just get a general warm-up set and then maybe some general movement prep stuff that I think would be in here. I think the movement prep stuff would be awesome for the older guys for sure, but the younger guys can take it too. So 2 questions that we got in here. The first one is, what % of injuries do you think are caused by lack of stretching or mobility work, lack of sleep, and improper hydration? So how important is making sure that we get a good amount of sleep. All you guys that are staying up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning playing video games, really listen to this. And proper hydration. All you guys that drink Coke all day long and Sprite and iced tea, make sure you listen to this. And all the guys that don't stretch, make sure you listen to this, because a lot of it for skill-wise, for baseball specific stuff, because obviously we're baseball and softball players, right? But for a lot of the skills, there are so many other things that go into this, just other than just being a good hitter and being a good thrower, right? How are you taking care of your body? Because, and we'll talk about recovery in a little bit, but for improper hydration, lack of sleep, and lack of mobility, stretching, you know, what percentage do you think happened like with injuries because of that?
That's awesome. I actually love that question. So as some of you guys know, I know you know, I was on a recovery summit this whole weekend watching videos on recovery. So I'm so primed for this question right now. I'm like ready to pop. But the first thing I'll say is hydration. So hydration, basically, if you have a 2% decrease in body weight during a workout, that's usually going to be from not having enough water. You're going to see a huge performance decrease once you hit that mark. So for instance, if you weighed 100 pounds, if you lost 2 pounds, so if you're down to 98 pounds after a workout, your performance is going to be significantly lower. So it's really important for you guys to drink often. It's really important that you guys aren't just drinking at one time a crazy amount, but you guys are actually drinking a small amount throughout the day, making sure you stay hydrated instead of getting dehydrated and rehydrating and going through that cycle. So it's really important just to do so consistently. And again, a 2% decrease in your body weight from hydration or from dehydration is going to lead to huge performance decrements. And again, I couldn't tell you exactly what number it's going to lead to for injuries, but I think it's going to have a role. Now, as far as the most important piece, and this is literally research, guys, the thing that shows the most relationship, the highest relationship to injury is a lack of sleep. So the studies actually show that I think it's 7 hours or less in sleep is going to be a huge increase in the amount of injury. So if you sleep, the sweet spot's 8 to 9 hours. If you sleep a little bit more than that, I wouldn't go past 10. You're actually going to see increase in injuries under 7 hours and then 10 hours and up. So it's really important to make sure you're sleeping, really important habit. Super happy that we touched on that. And guys, it's going to allow you to perform better too. If you sleep well, you're actually going to be able to work out harder. You're going to be able to train, and you're not going to like get crushed. So you'll see a lot of guys who aren't sleeping well and they're working out all the time and crushing push-ups and sit-ups and doing all that stuff all the time. They're going to be absolutely fried if you don't sleep. Sleep is by far the most important factor. So if you guys don't sleep, you know, I highly recommend you guys trying to dial that in now, especially with, I know, some bad habits coming up with video games and Fortnite and Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, Warzone. You know, it's super important that you guys are focusing on sleep. So to make sure you guys get sleep, I highly recommend you guys taking a real good approach to your bedtime routine, getting a nice bedtime ritual. So that can be anything, but what you're trying to do is basically program your body and your mind so that when you go into bed, your body knows that the bed is really only for sleep. So it's absolutely huge.
Yeah. I just know a lot of like, and I was like this for a while too. And I know that we're talking about strength and conditioning, so we'll get into that a little bit, but this is a huge part of it. A lot of guys will bring their iPads or their phones and stuff like into bed with them. So they never actually shut off. Right. And so what happens is you're sitting there and you got your phone in front of your face and you're playing a video game, you're looking at Instagram or Twitter, or you're Snapchatting somebody. And then when you finally put your phone down, a lot of people just want to go to bed right away. But the problem is that you haven't given yourself and your body time to be able to do that. And I notice for me, like if I go and lay down at, let's say 10 o'clock at night and I'm sitting there staring at my phone, it normally takes me until like 1 o'clock in the morning to actually fall asleep. So, and that's just me because I'm staring at my phone. I got that screen in front of my face. So like for a lot of you guys, there really does come a time where it's like, all right, cool down a little bit. Put the phone either in another room or on a different desk so that you can set an alarm, and you actually have to get out of bed to go get your phone to turn the alarm off. That's always a big thing for me. I know for me, a lot of times, if I've got my phone right next to my head, I can snooze my alarm, right? But if I've got my phone on the other side of my room on a dresser or on my desk, then whenever my alarm goes off, I actually have to get out of bed to go turn my alarm off. So for me, that actually helps me because now it gets me out of bed instead of snoozing that alarm. So for a lot of you guys, it's actually quality of sleep, I think. So putting the phone down in a place where you're not going to actually be able to have access to it. And then also in the morning, actually getting out of bed when your alarm goes off your body will get used to that routine so that, let's say you want to sleep from, a good 7 or 8 hours is like 10 until what, 10 to 6? That's a really, really good, or even 11 to 7. That's a really good amount of sleep and a good time for a lot of you guys. But quality of sleep is going to give you more energy. And then what's your theory on waking up in the morning and having a glass of water right away? Because I've heard a lot of stuff on that. Like, is that really positive? And then I'll get to Austin's question again after that. But is that really positive?
Yep, I think so, 100%. I think that most people are going to wake up dehydrated, almost everybody, because obviously you can't drink while you're sleeping.
Right.
So almost everybody wakes up dehydrated. So the quicker you can get back into a rehydrated state, the better it's going to be. And then just to touch too on that whole bedtime ritual of having your phone and playing games. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of blue light or familiar with it. I know it's kind of like a hot topic right now. But if you guys look outside where you are, we're lucky enough in Buffalo, what up, to have a little bit of sunshine today. And if you guys look outside there's actually blue light, which is a type of sunlight coming out, right? And that blue light messes with your hormones and chemicals in your body. So if you guys are getting blue light from your phones, and it's great that this guy has blue light glasses, Kai, I see you. That's awesome. Because if you guys are getting that phone light coming into you, that's blue light, and it basically teaches your body that it should still be awake and shouldn't be tired. Basically the body works with the sun, guys. So if you guys go outside and you guys get some sunlight during the morning, during the afternoon, your body goes, okay, so during this time, this is the day. And then when it naturally gets darker, blue light goes down, and that's when you start to get tired. But if you're constantly getting that blue light from video games and from TV and from your phone, from Twitter, it's just absolutely crushing those signals, and it's going to make it really hard to fall asleep at a good time.
Perfect. I like that. I just wrote a note down for myself because obviously for me that's a huge thing. So Austin threw in here. He said, he doesn't stretch very much, which obviously he should. He probably had to do a lot of it whenever he was playing professional baseball, because I know a lot of the organizations will require like a half-hour stretch in the weight room or something like that. If you have like an adaptation, so for a lot of you guys, if you're injured, broken toe, or fractured hand, or something like that, so Austin said he's got a fracture fragment in his right big toe, so push-ups and planks are very hard for him to do right now. So what should he do? And he said also, my core isn't the best. So what can he do? So for instance, if you have some type of injury, so let's say I have a leg injury. Let's say I hurt my hamstring, so I can't squat and I can't do lunges and stuff like that. Should I just shut down working out? What happens if I break my leg? Should I just shut it down? Like, what can I do whenever there's an injury? So for instance, a lot of the guys in here, probably their arms get sore after they pitch, right? And that's a topic for a whole another day, right? Which realistically, guys, whenever you pitch, your arms should not get sore. Just so you know, it should be the muscles that surround it. So your legs, your hamstrings, your low back, your lat, which is on the side. And then, that stuff should get sore, not your actual arm, but topic for another day. Anyway, so if you're a guy that has an injury, let's say my arm's sore from pitching, what can I still do to get my workout in? And what other things can I do at home to actually get those workouts done?
Yeah, so I'd say first and foremost, if you guys have access to a strength and conditioning coach, somebody who's pretty qualified to train you guys, I would definitely talk to somebody, because it definitely helps. Everything's on an individual basis. I had a guy, for instance, who I was having elbow issues. So we're looking at potential UCL. I think it ended up being a strain of it. A sprain. But anyway, so we had UCL issues. So for him, he ended up shutting it down. And for me, that's not necessarily something I agree with, because we have this. If I literally just imaginarily cut this off, I have my whole entire body outside of that I can train. So there's absolutely no reason to shut it down after an injury. And I know for me, like a lot of doctors will tell you to. I highly recommend talking to different doctors, because a lot of times what you see is if you guys shut down because of an elbow issue, all of a sudden when you come back, your legs are weak, your abs are weak, you have no stability, and you're putting so much more stress again on your shoulder. So if I have somebody who pitched, for instance, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, they might come in and do a lower body day or a movement day. Well, we're not necessarily going to challenge the muscles related to pitching super intensely.
Right.
So definitely don't stop. If you're hurt, guys, I highly recommend, again, talking to somebody, talking to a doctor, talking to a physical therapist, somebody who's qualified to help you, getting your own opinion, because again, every person is individual, every situation is different. But, you know, again, if I hurt my elbow, I have both my legs, I have my whole midsection, I have my other arm, then this is actually a really cool fact. If you broke your right arm and let's say the whole thing was casted up, if you train your left arm, because of the way your brain works, you'll actually get stronger in your right arm and you'll have an easier recovery when that's back to being good. So it's kind of crazy how the body works. So definitely don't take time off.
Right. No, that's good. And for all the guys that were spamming the chat, now you can't ask questions. So please just message them to Austin. So if we can't obviously listen in and do the right things, then we'll shut that off. So moving on. So as for the strength and conditioning stuff, when can they start to add in weights? Like I know that there was always, you know, this whole thing where if I start lifting weights when I'm younger, I'm going to stunt my growth, or, you know, I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So I know that that's where the private training coaches come in and things like that. But when can they start to actually use weights? And to be honest with you, what age can you get really intense with it? Because I know for us, we have kids that are 11 and 12 years old that are actually using weights. You know, so to be honest with you, if like, what age is it? Can they do it when they're 9? Like, it just all depends on the kid, right?
So the research shows now that you can really lift weights at any point in time. The biggest thing, like you kind of mentioned, is just making sure you're doing it right. Right. So I never want to see, especially, you know, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old athlete lifting a weight incorrectly, because at that point, you know, what are we even doing? Are we actually trying to get better? If you guys come into the weight room, your goal is to actually become a better athlete. So one of the biggest reasons I think every athlete should lift some weight, and again, it doesn't have to be crazy heavy all the time, but one of the reasons every athlete should is because you just learn how to move your body better. You learn what an efficient body does, right? So if I need a deadlift, and deadlift's very complex when you're first learning it, even though it seems simple, when you guys are doing it, you're learning how to utilize the back of your leg, your glute, and your hamstring. And a lot of guys and a lot of athletes don't know how to do that, and the weight room is a really good place to learn it. So it's really beneficial to really lift weight at any point in time. It's just making sure that you're doing it right and you're actually getting coached on it, so you're not developing bad movements. And it's basically what you're going to find. The difference between a youth athlete and an adult athlete, or, you know, somebody who's going through their teenage years, is hormones make a huge difference. So you're going to see guys, before they hit puberty, they're going to get a lot stronger, but they're not going to get that much bigger. Like, you're not going to see a huge bicep or a huge chest because they don't have enough testosterone yet. So as soon as you actually start to get into it, you'll start to see, you know, once puberty hits, testosterone is going to light up. You're going to be able to build a ton of muscle. But that being said, it's not always the biggest athlete. I'd almost rather have it as it's a little smaller that can produce more force, because they're going to be quicker. They're going to be able to utilize that in all their sports. So for me, I guess you can really lift at any time, just making sure you're doing it correctly. You can do body weight stuff at any age. I mean, body weight should always be trained. Do body weight before you do any type of weights. Learn your movements before you add any weight. And then you can grind it out. Then you can add some weight as you get stronger and build up to it. But they really show that there's no detriment as long as you're doing things correctly.
Right. I'm going to go into the question that Austin put in the chat. What would be better, listening to the radio or listening to a CD of calming music? I think calming music's obviously really beneficial at nighttime, because I think that definitely helps you kind of relax a little bit. You know, but when you guys are working out, or when you're going through your day, I mean, listen to what's going to get you guys going. So at nighttime though, for sure, you know, listen to some calming music instead of having, you know, any type of hard rap or even country music. Sometimes for me kind of keeps me awake. So something calming I think is big. To keep going on this, quantity, quality, things like that. How many days a week should, I mean, for push-ups and sit-ups, I already mentioned earlier that they can literally just do that every single day, right? Like, you can do some type of body weight stuff every day. Change up the body groups though. So maybe one day kind of go really heavy on the body weight with the upper body, and then maybe some other days do some heavy stuff with the lower half. I think that core is something that we can do a lot. I know the mistake I made with core whenever I was in college is I thought that I could, and core, guys, just so you know, is my abs, the sides, my low back. So for a lot of you guys, like, I would try and do that every day. And I realized that, I mean, it's overtraining. You know, it's the same thing as why wouldn't I bench press or squat every single day? Because you just can't, your body can't handle it. So what I would do is I would incorporate some forearm stuff and then do some ab stuff and then do some other things every other day and kind of just change it that way. But for a lot of these guys, and I know it varies, I know it varies, but what's ideally the amount, how many days a week should these guys be working out? And let's talk a little bit about the running training, like the sprint training and aerobic type training. So I know a lot of guys don't really like to run. I'm not a huge runner. I don't like to do it. For me, I always said, I mean, this is, and I know Austin will laugh at this one, kind of listening in, is if you hit the ball over the fence, you don't really have to run that much. So why would I train running? But from a strength and conditioning perspective, we all know that running is definitely going to help us recover faster. So if you could just go into, you know, how many days a week do these guys, should they be working out, and what kind of like sprint training or endurance training should they be doing on their own?
Yeah, so let's tackle the first one. We'll go into how many days. So that changes, number one, as you get older, as you get more into it. For really any athlete who hasn't worked out, 2 days to start is fine. Like, you'll actually see a lot of progress 2 days a week for a while. And then when that starts to plateau, add a third day. And then honestly, once you get to 3 days, now you have the opportunity, especially during the offseason, guys, like, we're going to have a long offseason this year. You have the opportunity now to train 3 to 6 days a week. You know, it really depends on the athlete, how committed you are, what equipment you have, what you have access to right now. But realistically, if I was going into the offseason, I'm training probably 4 to 5 times a week. Is a good place to stay. 3 days works. In season, we're looking for 2 to 3 days. And then again, for the youth athletes, like 2 to 3 days works pretty well. So with that, let's talk about sprint training. If you're training to become a better baseball player, and this was my mistake, guys, this was everything that I went through wrong. I only got strong. So strength is great, but sport happens really, really fast. So it's really good if you're strong, but if you can lift a really heavy weight and it takes you 2 seconds, 3 seconds to do so, sport happens so much faster than that, so it's not really going to matter. You have to make sure that you're also training your body not only to produce force and to be strong, but then to do so really, really fast. And that's what sprinting really helps with. So for sprinting, I would say every athlete in here should be sprinting 2 to 4 times a week. And when you are sprinting, it shouldn't be long enough that you're going to be gassed. So we're talking like 10 to 40 yards. And then on top of that, you need to take enough recovery that you feel like you could literally race at your top speed again. So we're looking at, for our older athletes, probably 3 to 5 minutes. For our youth athletes, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But you need to make sure that you're rested enough that you can actually do so at your max ability. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. And then when you go into recovery and having that aerobic base, running, it doesn't have to be running, right? It can be running, it can be biking, it can be swimming, it can be doing movement circuits, it can be really a number of different things. But what you're looking for is your heart rate to be up, right around like 60 to 70% of your max, and you're just looking to maintain that heart rate for between 30 minutes and 90 minutes. And doing that once to twice a week, again, especially in the off season, you're going to be able to build hopefully a really good base so that when you do your hard workouts, you're going to recover better. So one of the ways that I saw this in my career, when I played, I would hit a single, and again, I was kind of fast, so I had an opportunity to steal second. And if I did steal second, I was absolutely shot. So like if I stole second, even if I knew how to steal third, I probably couldn't just because I was gassed. So it's really important that you develop that base, because that's just going to allow you to be able to sprint, run fast, produce power, and then recover so you can do it again and again. And my issue was I was able to do so, but then I couldn't recover from it. It took me forever, so I wouldn't be able to do it again. So if you actually look at how this relates to baseball, I could hit a single or a double. If I hit a double, count me out, dude. I need to call time, fake time my shoe. I'm taking like 30 seconds to a minute, 2 minutes, because I'm just gassed. So I need to make sure that I can recover better. That way you don't need to take that break and potentially hurt your team.
Right. And so like, even for me, I'm able to run a pretty good distance. Like I've always been able to run for a long time. So for me, like my recovery time was actually pretty good. But like I said, like I always struggled in the explosive power and the strength. And then I've always struggled in the fast sprint speed, but I was always really good on mobility, flexibility, and recovery time. So like, for instance, I could actually pitch 2 full games in a week whenever I was younger. And it was because my body was able to recover fast. So everybody's different, but understand, guys, that pitchers do a lot of running, right? And you watch that all the time. So for the younger guys that are just starting to throw, like the best thing that you can do after you pitch in a game is just to go for a run, right? They call it a flush run, but realistically what that does, it just helps you continue to have that base that you're trying to keep to recover. But a lot of pitchers run because they have to pitch a lot of times in a game, and then they have to recover, because if you watch in major leagues, they got to come back 4 or 5 days later and throw again. So how can we let our arms recover, and how can we do all of that in that same specific amount of time? So really what I'm hearing Sam say for a lot of you guys to start to kind of dial this back so you guys understand is, number one, you got to make sure that you're warming up all the time. That is so incredibly important, because if you guys don't warm up, then you have a really high chance of injury. Like, and I tell people this all the time. Like I do a lot of training sessions. I basically throw probably 1,000 baseballs a day. Okay. How is my body able to handle that? The only reason I'm able to, I'm going to be completely honest with you, is because when the kids come in to do pitching stuff with me, I do band work with them. I take care of my arm because I have to. Otherwise, I'm in trouble with my arm's going to get hurt. You also have to have that really good aerobic base, and aerobic base basically means endurance running and sprint training. And then you guys can get into the actual strength training with push-ups and sit-ups and squats and all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of go into, before we kind of get into all the other stuff, I'm going to go into some of these questions that Austin put in here. How does long distance running benefit for baseball as an outfielder? So you can kind of go into that, because I know for a lot of the outfielders, a lot of people don't like playing outfield for the younger guys, but how can endurance and distance running help outfielders?
Huge. So again, if you look at it, and I played actually center field for a little bit during my high school time as well. And let's say that you're a right fielder or left fielder especially, and let's say there's a foul ball, guys, and you guys are chasing, you guys are giving a full sprint, maybe you dive after it and you miss it, right? Now you have to jog back and there's another play. Are you going to be ready for that second play? And to me, that's the absolute biggest way to look at it, right? You can't be shot. You have to be able to sprint and recover and sprint and recover. And you guys, I mean, if you're an outfielder and you're doing a really good job and you're backing up bases even, you guys are running a fair amount. You guys are running more than other positions. You know, if you're a right fielder and there's, let's say, a hit and you're going to back up anywhere, like you're gonna get tired unless you have that aerobic base. And then I think the biggest reason, again, for really all athletes, especially as you age, if you have a good aerobic base, you're going to be able to work out harder and you're going to not feel like you're getting killed. So if you can look at two athletes, and if we put athlete A, who can only work out 3 days a week because he's fried if he works out more than that, and you have athlete B who can work out 5 days a week and doesn't get fried, who do you think is going to see better progress over the long term, right? And we're not talking over a week or two, but if you look at 2 extra workouts for a full year, you're looking at 104 more workouts than the other guy. I mean, that's a huge difference for that. That's a game changer.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that's big. So looking at that, I think that's huge. So somebody put in here, they've created a baseball specific workout with no equipment, with just planks, squats, push-ups, and all forearm type stuff. How many days a week should they do it?
I would at least take at least 1 day rest in between, you know, so maybe 3 days a week if you want to do like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I would also say, you know, don't look necessarily just at muscles. So one of the biggest things that I see with a lot of athletes, if you only do push-ups, let's say push-ups, squats, crunches, all that type of stuff, there's a good chance, number one, that you're not getting strong enough in the areas where you need to throw a baseball. So if I had to highlight my 3 most important moves for every youth athlete, number 1's the hardest one. You guys need to be able to do chin-ups. And I'm not talking like 1 chin-up. I'm talking like 10 chin-ups. So that's number 1, work on chin-ups. Number 2, work on being able to do lunges. And there's a ton of different lunge variations that you guys can do. But work on being able to do lunges really well, really efficiently, because that's going to show me that when you guys throw, you're going to be able to stabilize at that end position. And also you're probably going to be a little bit faster because you're used to producing force on one leg. And then number 3, it's kind of like a vague one, but I'm going to say all your core exercises, like core stability. Now, I look at core as in kind of like what Ron said, you're looking at abs, you're looking at the side of the abs, you're looking at your low back, you're even looking at your hips, guys. So I want to make sure you guys are really good at like planks, side planks. We do anti-rotation holds, they're called, with a band going across where you're just trying to hold it still. But those are, I guess, my 3 most important moves for you guys. Push-ups, everybody loves, no harm there. Just make sure you guys get a really big reach at the top of your push-ups. And, you guys can add some squats in there too. And that would be a really good plan to start. Now, again, the more you can work on the back side of the leg, because it tends to get neglected, that's great. But again, 3 times a week works really well. Make sure you take a day of rest, 2 days of rest if you feel like you need it. Listen to your body. Maybe even start with 2 times a week for the first 2 weeks and then go up to 3 times a week. You got to really listen to your body, especially when you're starting your program, because you don't want to overdo it. And like for me, I used to hurt, I hurt my tendon. I had tendonitis in my right knee, which is like jumper's knee. And I've had that for 4.5 years. And I'm just now learning enough to get that under control for the last 6 months. So you guys really want to make sure you're not overdoing it. And then just make sure if you guys are doing that workout plan 2 to 3 times a week, I would just add sprints into the beginning of that, right after your warm up. So you guys can actually work on developing speed and power. Because at the end of the day, if you're faster at any position, it's going to help you. It's only going to help you.
Hey, so I'll go into 2 other things that I want to mention. While I'm doing that, can you pull up and put in the chat that 4-week program that you put together for people that are just getting back into it and athletes working at home?
I can see what I have.
All right, because it's the one that we had with the throwing program, the warm up and then sprint stuff and all that stuff. I think that's good to have in here. So 2 things I want to go over, guys. Number 1, we talk a lot of times about athleticism. I've talked about athleticism almost every single day in here. We teach it. That's what we do. When we're teaching all of our guys to be good baseball players and softball players, it's not just that. When we go to the performance center, which is where Sam kind of does all of his work with our guys, we're trying to make them better athletes, right? A lot of people out there are talking about pick one sport, specialize in one sport. You guys heard it on Friday that you can't just specialize in one thing. Play as many sports as you guys can. Here's the reason why. In baseball, you learn how to turn and twist really well. Okay? That's what we do most of the time in baseball. We twist and we turn. Hit. When you hit, you twist your hips, you turn your hips. When you throw a baseball, your hips go. When you pitch, your hips work. When you throw a softball off the mound, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with softball pitching right now, it's a lot of hips. That's what creates the whip and the snap with everything. It's all about how the hips move. So we're doing a lot of turning in baseball. But I played basketball my whole life, and I just played yesterday because it was one of the nicer days here. My calves are sore today because I did a lot of jumping, right? And you're going off the ground and you're jumping side to side and you're making cuts. You don't do that in baseball all the time. So using those muscles in other sports will actually help you become a better athlete on the baseball field. And then with football, learn how to get hit and brace and actually block and stop people and have strength in the ground. And if you're a running back in football, learn how to cut left and right and work through and get by blockers and things like that. So for a lot of the stuff that I think that you guys should be doing is baseball and softball might be your first love. And that's awesome because you guys can do that every single day, right? But also have some other supplemental sports that you guys are doing, whether it's basketball, tennis, badminton. It doesn't really matter as long as you're doing something that's working different muscles, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to be the most elite baseball player that you can or softball player that you can, it's about being the best athlete in general. When you look at guys like LeBron James and you look at guys like Mike Trout, those guys could literally play in any sport and probably figure out how to do it. And I don't know any of you guys that are watching this Michael Jordan the documentary that they're doing every Sunday night, but he actually stopped his basketball career for a while to play baseball. Now, obviously baseball wasn't his main sport, but he learned how to do a lot of things and understand his body better through baseball that probably helped him in basketball, right? And so for me, I learned a lot about how to be a good baseball player and be a good shortstop by learning how to jump and cut side to side and adapt to different hops and be able to jump for that high line drive that was hit over my head because I used basketball as a way to learn that, right? I didn't go into the gym all the time and work on my vertical jump. I played basketball a lot, which helped me with my jumping ability, right? So for a lot of you guys, yes, you love baseball and that's awesome. Great, keep playing, but do other things as well. And I think that that'll help you a lot. And then as for the strength and conditioning stuff, if your body isn't in a position to do what you want it to, like for instance, I know a lot of kids in here are probably like, man, I really want to hit home runs all the time. Well, that's really great. But if you're not strong enough to hit the ball over the fence, you're not going to. So you're going to get really frustrated in your head because you're like, man, I wish my swing was better. I get that. but you're also 10, 11, 12 years old. And some of you guys that are high school kids, if you're not hitting the ball out, or if you're not hitting the ball in the gap consistently or crushing baseballs, look and see what your strength is like. You know what I mean? Whenever I realized personally, when I realized that there were a lot of really elite athletes out there, I was able to hang out with some pro guys the last couple of years. They are physical beasts, right? Look at Mike Trout. Look at Aaron Judge. Look at any elite athlete that you guys watch on TV. They look strong. Now, and what Sam said earlier that made a lot of sense was when you're younger, you may not have the look of being that strong, and that's okay, because as you get older, you're going to develop into that. But you also need to make sure that you're actually working on it. So if you're a guy that's in here that literally can't drop down right now and do 10 really, really, really good push-ups, we need to start to actually train that, because you're probably not going to get your bat to work through the zone really fast until you're strong enough to hold it up, right? And as for your legs, you can't actually expect that your hips are going to be able to drive really, really, really fast unless you actually learn to make your legs stronger. Until your legs and your hips and your core get stronger, you're not going to be able to turn quickly. It's just not going to happen. So what we did, and this is why I think that this conversation is great, is the knowledge of understanding that strength and conditioning and creating the environment that your body is very important rather than your skills all the time. I think that you actually perform better on the field. That's why we did the performance stuff, because I think that if you can become a better athlete and a stronger athlete, one that moves a lot better, that you're not going to get injured, your growth goes through the roof. So yes, we should still hit and we should throw and we need to do our long toss and things like that. But drop and give yourself, 20, 30, 40, 50 push-ups a day. Do some core stuff. Do some planks, side planks, things like that. The stronger that you guys get, okay, the easier it's going to be when you get outside on the field. You guys understand that? You guys got that? But Sam, I know we got a couple minutes, so I'll let you kind of close it up.
Yeah, all I want to do, I just want to give you guys some metrics, and basically I just want to give you guys some numbers to shoot for, some things where you can kind of evaluate where your strength is currently. And we've really found that we've seen velo go up, we've seen exit velo go up like crazy, and it's really coming down to this. So we look at deadlifting, whether you're doing a trap bar deadlift, a straight bar deadlift, a sumo deadlift, whatever. We're looking at deadlift at least 2 times your body weight, and not right now, but at least work towards it. We're looking to be able to lunge. If you guys do a reverse lunge with a bar on your back, in the front rack, however you hold it, we're looking for 5 reps on each side with your body weight on the bar. We're looking to be able to do 10 chin-ups. We're looking to be able to do a 2-minute plank. And then if you guys are doing squats, I like to see, probably a 1.5 to 2 times body weight squat of some sort. And, if you look at push-ups, every athlete, 100%, I don't even make a metric for push-ups, except for the fact that you should at least be able to do 10, but it's really not like impressive. You guys, that's kind of like a minimum. You guys, all athletes, if you guys can't do really good push-ups, should be working on them, because you should be able to do at least 10. It's going to show me shoulder stability. It's going to show me how your core can function. And it really translates, fairly well, just basic human movements. But realistically, you should probably be able to do closer to like 30 to 50 push-ups if you're in pretty good shape. And then the last thing I'll say on the topic is I want you guys to think about it this way. You want to be a human first. So can you just move well in your daily life outside of sports? Then I want you to be an athlete second. And an athlete can play a ton of different sports. You can play baseball, soccer, ping pong. It's my jam. You guys don't want any. But you can play any sport. And then third, you're going to be a baseball player, right? So you want to be able to play all sports and do all things well.
Right, and that's big. So again, I'll go over that. Move well as a person first. Guys, sports are a really good platform to develop really, really good habits in your life. So when you guys are done playing, which unfortunately the game ends for everybody, we want to make sure that we've helped you guys develop habits to move very well as people, okay? The second thing is, and I've literally worn that I should never use this word again. I love this word more than anything, is be an athlete. It's my favorite word in the whole world. If you can be an athlete, okay, I think that's really, really going to help you guys in everything that you do. Okay, I always say this: baseball players do a really good job mentally on being able to play a bunch of other sports, right? Because they're able to go out on the field. They're able to go, for me, basketball, it's going to take me 10 minutes to figure out how to shoot a basket, and I'm good, right? Throwing a football, I can throw a football. I can figure out how to cut left and right. But I want to be able to go onto every field and be able to compete. So that's huge. And then the third thing is then work on your skills. So as you're noticing, move well as a person. Push-ups are big. Squats are big. All that stuff is big. Be an athlete as much as you can. Play as many sports as you possibly can. And then last thing, then work on your craft and what your skill is. I think if you guys can use all three of those, you're going to get a lot out of this. So I know we gave you guys a ton of information today. We've got a lot of stuff for the rest of the week. But start working out every single day. This is the best time in the entire world to be able to do it. Pull-ups, chin-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, everything that you guys can do at home. You don't need a ton of weight for it. Again, if you guys have any questions about this, please shoot us an email, send us a link on Instagram. We'll do whatever we can to help you guys out for sure. So, Austin, you got anything to close up?
Yeah, no, great stuff. Only thing I have to say is, Sam, be careful about the ping pong. You don't want it.
Oh, dude. My jam, man.
I love ping pong. No, good stuff, guys. This is huge, and really pay attention to this the next couple of days, because this is one of the separators between you getting to the next level, and not only just in your career, but wherever you want to be physically, mentally, and all that good stuff. So this is real. It's all good stuff. So thank you. Sam.
All right, guys. We'll see you
tomorrow.
We'll see you, Coach Sam. I'll see you in the
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.